My name is Schweitzer, Albert Schweitzer. I'm 37 years old. I studied at the University of Strasbourg and obtained my doctorate in music, philosophy, and theology. I was then just 24. Perhaps one would think that I should be happy or even proud. But no, it was exactly the opposite. There was a gnawing uneasiness within, a strange disquiet, a void, which made me increasingly unhappy. Being counted among the learned elite of Germany brought me no happiness. How could I possibly be happy when there are so many unhappy, poor, miserable, suffering people in our world? I needed to serve. I felt impelled to change the course of my life. The University of Strasbourg is an excellent source of learning, but it is snobbish in the extreme, as it enrolled chiefly students from rich families, aristocrats, and those of proven noble lineage. I did not fall in any of these categories. I was just a village boy studying at a local school in the very poor small village of Gunsbach in the province of Alsace, which, before the First World War, was part of Germany. My school friends were very poor and had many wants. I was far better off, my father being a pastor at the village church, so that we stayed comfortably in the parsonage. It always hurt me to see my friends so much poorer, and I tried my best to be as one with them. My mother was wonderfully kind and understanding. One winter, when it snowed daily, she said, "Albert, I've got you strong shoes so that your feet don't get wet and this warm coat to protect you from the cold." I thought for a moment and said, "Mother, I can't wear these shoes. My friends can't afford them and they wear clogs, so may I continue to wear clogs, please? How can I wear this warm coat when my friends shiver in this weather? Please let me shiver with them." She said nothing at first, but her eyes were moist. She embraced me, whispered, "I understand. Wear what you wish." After school, I took the entrance exam at the university. I studied very hard for my doctorates. Music was my passion. My father taught me the piano before my feet could reach the pedals. Now, I acquired a proficiency in playing the organ, particularly the music of Bach. Life beckoned me with opportunity and success. And then it happened. Suddenly, like a revelation, I decided to take a break from my studies and spend the Whitsuntide holidays at our home in Gunsbach. I remember that day more vividly than any other day in my life. It was a glorious summer morning. I awoke to the sweet twitter of birds with sunlight streaming through the window, when a sudden thought possessed me. I felt it was my good fortune to live in reasonable comfort and study what I desired in school and university. I must not take this good fortune for granted, but must give back to the world something in return. I reflected deeply on this sudden thought and resolved that I would continue my scholastic studies in philosophy, theology, music, history, and humanities until I was 30 years old, and then devote the rest of my life to serving humanity. I could not understand how, why, or whence this sudden thought sprang into my head. It seemed to me as if it was a visitation, or revelation from above, and an utter compulsion to follow it through. I was merely 24 years old. I did not know in what manner I would serve humanity when I was 30 years old. I just knew that I had to. I continued my research and studies for the next 6 years. A study of comparative religions, Zoroastrianism, Judaism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Islam, convinced me that all great religions of the world traversed different roads only to reach the same source, the Supreme Being. I had mastered the organ and gave several public recitals. To me, Bach is the greatest of the greats. He is an artist who paints a beautiful picture or a complete work of architecture in lines of sound. Gothic architecture transformed into sound. I was nearing 30 years old. And then it happened. Once again, just as it did on that early morning in Gunzbach, I opened a magazine, which I never usually open, and stumbled upon an advertisement requesting for a doctor in French Equatorial Africa, to be exact, in Gabon, in a small mission station in Lambarane. The Africans in this province were riddled with disease, dying very early in their lives. There was no one to help, no medical aid available. This is just what I was looking for, to help where help was most needed. It was a Protestant mission, and they were wary about my religious beliefs. I answered that I would serve as a doctor to care for and help the people in the province, and not as a missionary. The mission knew that I was a doctor in philosophy, theology, and music. I said I would be prepared to become a doctor of medicine if my proposal was accepted, and also I would not ask for any fees from all the patients I cared for. They finally agreed, and my wish had been fulfilled. It was as if I was ordained, predestined to follow the path I chose. Yet I had a long way to go. It took me 7 years of grueling work at the medical school of the University of Strasbourg before I was finally awarded the doctorate of medicine. During this period, I continued both teaching at the university and also conducting my own personal research. My research publications on the quest of the historical Jesus and on the psychiatric study of Jesus brought forth both praise and criticism. I was also now in great demand in many cities of Europe as a virtuoso organist, particularly Bach. Besides writing a biography of this great composer, I published the complete organ works of Bach in 5 volumes. I sometimes wonder how I managed to do all this at the same time. Perhaps one reason is that I can do with very little sleep. At times, I read and wrote all through the night, and then attended medical school early next morning. When I was 37, I married the love of my life, Helen Breslau. She was at the nursing school while I was pursuing medicine. Helen was a highly accomplished nurse who could also give anesthesia. Our marriage must surely have been made in heaven. At last, with Helen by my side, I was ready for Africa. I wrote to my parents and friends informing them of my decision. My friends wrote back first.
Albert, we are amazed that you did not discuss your plans with us before finalizing them.
Why should I discuss them?
You're making a mistake. You're wasting your God-given talents in the jungles of Africa. Surely you should use your talents to better purpose. Why not raise funds for the Africans by giving organ recitals in Europe rather than going to Africa? Albert, I know ever since you joined that you are an ambitious man. Perhaps you want to act superior. Think twice. Africa is a cruel country rife with disease. You could return to us both ill and defeated. Tell me, Albert, is it that you want to become a saint? Saint Francis, now Saint Albert. Well, if you do become one, you won't know it, as saints are canonized well after their death.
My parents did not reply by letter. They both visited me in Strasbourg, walking into the room where I was working. Son, your mother and I are shocked and extremely worried after reading your letter. Father, you preach to parishioners every Sunday. I wish to express my love for God not just in thought and words, but in action and deed. Please forgive me for any distress I've caused you. But surely, son, you can express your love for God by caring in many ways for people close to your home, in Gunsbach, in Alsace, or France, or Germany, places close to where you live, where you belong. Why choose a very distant place among people you do not know, who think, speak, and live differently, a place known to be rife with many diseases for which there is no cure? Both your father and I strongly disapprove. It is better to prevent a mistake than to make a mistake and regret it. However, if you are intent on choosing this untrodden path, then God be with you. Who knows? Perhaps you love God better than we do. You always have our blessings. We should pray most for your safety and also for your success. The evening of our lives will, however, be tinged with sadness. To not have you close. We got up. We embraced tight and long, stifled our sobs, and pretended to smile. I dropped them at the station. I saw my mother's face slowly disappear as the train picked up steam. The first voyage from my village Gunsbach in Alsace to Lambaréné, the mission station in French Equatorial Africa, is deeply etched in my mind. It was like being in another world. The river stretching endlessly, glittering in the sun. A thick tropical forest close to the bank, tall, dense trees so that within there was no distinguishing day from night. This huge, rather frightening, primeval forest must have been present millions of years before Homo sapiens first appeared in the world. It is humbling to remember that Homo sapiens first appeared in Africa. Human beings are from African descent, a sobering thought for the whites who consider themselves so superior. I often relive our shock when we reached Lambarane. Where's the hospital? Excuse me, where's the hospital that I was promised? I could see nothing. Those who received me said there was a labor problem, but they promised to set up the hospital building within 6 months. 6 months? Well, what am I to do for 6 months? I looked at Helen. To my surprise, she was smiling. Look around you, Albert. She exclaimed. I did so, and was indeed entranced. Nature, unspoilt nature in all its beauty and splendor. The river with its gentle hum, the virgin forest, the 3 hills that form the mission station at Lambarene. The slope of the hill most upstream housed a boys' school and a large storage house. The middle had a pretty bungalow, skirted all around by a veranda. It was where we were to live. The last hill, the one downstream, had again a mission house and a large empty house that could store our medical and surgical supplies. Each of these houses was surrounded by a grove of coffee bushes, lemon, orange, mandarin, and mango trees. They embellished nature's beauty and charm. I smiled and looked back at Helen. We would have gone on looking and looking and looking, had it not been for the buzz and bites of the flies and mosquitoes who, perhaps sensing fresh meat, decided to sample the flavors. We went up to our little 4-roomed house, unpacked, and slept. The next morning was a nightmare. We woke up at dawn and there were already 30 patients who had traveled, perhaps days, on the river, waiting to see me. What should we do? Where do we examine and treat them? Helen and I looked at each other. It would have to be out in the open, in front of our house, under the sun. Some had open, bleeding, festering sores. We cleaned the sores, dressed and bandaged them. We worked all day without pause. At the end of the day, Helen and I were on the verge of collapse. Was my mission in Africa destined to end before it had even begun? We could not survive in the open under this scorching sun. Helen noticed a derelict, broken-down structure close to our house. It had served as a chicken coop to my predecessor. It had no windows and a broken roof. We had it reasonably repaired, put in a cot, and used it as an examination and treatment room. Fortune and misfortune sometimes go hand in hand. Misfortune over, fortune smiled. Out of the blue came a Gabonese man named Joseph, who spoke French fluently as well as several African dialects. He was my savior, as I could now finally communicate with the patients. He was very intelligent, and I trained him to help me in all of my work. Patients would come along the river, upstream and downstream, being rowed in canoes by relatives and friends, at times for days to reach me. Each patient was always accompanied by the whole family and also by friends. They would rather not come otherwise. To our intense relief, the full consignment of medical and surgical supplies, which I had selected and ordered in Europe, arrived by a large river boat to Lambaréné within days of our own arrival. The munificence of several rich donors, institutions, and universities had made this possible. They had promised to replenish medical supplies at intervals as and when needed. This consignment also contained my piano, with pedal attachments, built for the tropics, which the Bach Society of Paris had given me in recognition for my many years of service as their organist. I played Bach every single night. It was my solace and my refuge. It sustained me when difficulties seemed insurmountable. Within 2 weeks, we were well organized for work. The physical difficulties we experienced were overwhelming, but the ignorance, prejudices, superstitions we met with day after day made work doubly difficult. Among native Africans, I am called Oganga, the fetish man, the medicine man. The locals who practice medicine were also called Ogangas. The natives of French Equatorial Africa were convinced that illness was caused by magic, evil spirits, and most of all, by the worm. One morning, when I was examining patients, 10 local Ogangas marched into the clearing in front of the Lambaréné mission. They had war paint on their bare skin, fancy headdresses, brandished spears, shouted and stamped, "Go home, white doctor and white woman, this is our land. You steal our patients and our money. Go back to white man's country or you shall die here." I walked up to within a foot of the Oganga, who I thought was their leader. I shouted very loudly, "Taisez-vous!" Shut up. And continued in French. "Peut-être je mourrai ici, mais je ne sortirai jamais d'Afrique." And then pointing my finger towards the edge of the forest, I shouted even louder, "Go! Never come back!" The shouting continued outside. Soon there was silence. miracle. Now, what did I see in the first 4 months in Africa? I realized I was in the midst of suffering and misery, illnesses of all kinds, those seen in Europe, but introduced into Africa by the colonialists. Also diseases only particular to Africa, but again spread to other parts of the continent by white colonialists during their efforts to colonize. I could manage problems common both to the West and the African continent. Heart attacks, strokes, pneumonia, other common infections. It was the tropical infections, particularly acute tropical infections, which to start with rendered me absolutely helpless. Moderately severe attacks of malaria were usually cured by oral quinine, but fulminant malaria could kill in 24 hours, as could cholera, fulminant dysentery, liver abscesses, tetanus, bites of poisonous snakes, also poisonings, both suicidal and homicidal. The nature of the poisons always undetermined. I also observed a particular disease termed sleeping sickness caused by the bite of the tsetse fly, which operates only during the day. The patient becomes increasingly sleepy, is ultimately unarousable, and dies. The Anopheles mosquito at night and the tsetse fly in the day. No rest. I shall never forget the first man who, well, he came in with frequent painful convulsions, his body tight and stiff as a rod, his face transfixed into a painful grimace. He had severe tetanus, rare in Europe, but I had seen it before. We transported and placed him on a large table in a classroom of the boys' school. There was no medicine other than a sedative to control his convulsions, so we sedated him as best as we could. Even so, he could not breathe well. His larynx closed into spasms periodically. Secretions in his throat and respiratory passages choked him. He needed a tracheostomy, a surgical procedure where one fashions an opening in the trachea and inserts a tube so that the patient can continue to breathe even if his upper respiratory passage is blocked. It was major surgery, considering my surroundings. It was, however, the right thing to do. If it is the right thing to do and you've done this procedure before, do it, said Helen. No, shouted Joseph. He will die and people will say you killed him. Helen, optimistic, showing eternal faith, distinguishing right from wrong. Joseph, wise to the native ways, cautious, pessimistic, his priority being to protect me and my reputation. Helen, the knife, please. The operation performed under local anesthesia was successful. The patient could breathe well. It was important that the tube was not blocked by secretions, which needed to be sucked out with the suction machine. If the tube became blocked, he would be unable to breathe. It was my turn to look after the patient in the night. Without realizing it, I awoke with a jerk. To my horror, the patient was gasping. The tracheostomy tube was blocked, and before I could do anything, this man. I was supposed to cure. Instead, it was not the disease that killed him. I killed him. Helen, we should return to Strasbourg. No. No. You know that severe tetanus is invariably fatal. You forget the number of people you have already helped. We need to continue to serve and do our work as best as we can. I drowned myself in work. Time and again, I felt defeated and depressed. The oppressive heat made things worse. Helen remained strong, though. What's the matter with you? Must all patients live? Did you see that happen in hospitals in Europe? Don't count only the dead. Why don't you count those that got well? The patients with abscesses, numerous patients with malaria, diarrhea, tropical ulcers, and so many others. You are not God, who can cure one and all. You need to rest and have a good night's sleep. I followed her advice. Saw no patients the whole day. Rested, played Bach, and slept. I woke up in the morning feeling like a different man. Something had unlocked inside of me. It was work again, work with passion, determination. I now learned to take life and death philosophically in my stride. Surgeries were fixed for 3 mornings in the week. Fortunately, I had to deal with only minor surgical problems. This was not to last. In our 3rd month, I faced the most formidable emergency I have ever faced in my life. A young man with a strangulated hernia in severe pain and frequent vomiting. Oganga, kill the worm. We were back to our makeshift operation table in the classroom of the boys' school. On examination, it was clear that the gut within his hernia had ruptured and contaminated the abdominal cavity, causing peritonitis, which has a high mortality rate even today. The eternal question I faced: should I or should I not? Should I leave him to die or operate and offer a very, very slim chance to life? No, he will die and you will be blamed, piped in Joseph on cue. It was the most difficult surgery I have ever performed in my life. Joseph, tell your girls to point the lamps not on the wall but on the operation site. I must be able to see properly, or how can I operate? Helen, he has already bled a great deal. I've caught and tied all the bleeders, but now the operative field is very pale. His blood pressure must be very low. Yes, Albert, I can barely feel his pulse, and it is very fast and irregular. He needs more fluid. Joseph, quickly find a vein and push saline into the vein again and again with a large syringe. Also, will somebody get me a flat stool to stand on? This wooden table is too high. I can't see. Sweat is going into my eyes. Can somebody mop my brow? Helen, is he okay? Pulse is now at 120 beats a minute, regular and better felt. Surgery was 3 long hours like this. But then the anesthetic wore off. The patient opened his eyes. Helen and even Joseph smiled. Oganga, I have no pain. He held my hand and wouldn't let go. He looked at me. You killed the worm. Well, jubilation in the hospital enclosure. Clapping, singing, dancing. In the early morning, the patient and all his relatives sat together. I sat in the middle, Helen at one end. We joined hands. We all joined hands. Thank God, each in his or her own way. It was then that I truly understood the meaning of the words, "We are all brethren." I felt I was in the middle of a play. Within the primeval African forest, a play featuring life and death, and I running aimlessly between them, touching either one or the other. Why is it that some patients who should surely die live, and other patients that should surely live die? I don't know. My friend Einstein says, God does not play dice with the universe. So does this mean that everything is preordained? Destined? Bound to happen? I remember Joseph waking me early one morning. Oganga, they have brought another dying man to see you. His relatives have rowed 100 miles downstream without a single break. Say no. I saw the patient. He was indeed close to death. He had a huge tropical festering ulcer on his leg and thigh, which had eaten up the flesh and was oozing pus and blood. He's dying. I shall only inflict more pain on him. The poor man opened his eyes, held my gaze, and lifted his hands as if in prayer. How could I not treat him? He would likely die, but I could still give him empathy, care, and love till such time as he lived. Helen and I picked off the maggots in the wound. He was placed on a table, anesthetized. I removed dead gangrenous tissue, controlled the bleeding, and dressed the wound. We kept him for over a month, doing twice daily dressing till he was well. When he was to go, he said not a word, but looked into my eyes and lifted and folded his hands again. Perhaps this time in gratitude. It was not just our treatment that made him live. There grew a great bond between the man and me, a doctor-patient bond which lies at the very heart of medicine. It is this bond which inspired trust, hope, and above all, faith. Faith indeed is a great healer. I feel it was faith that saw him through. The first 4 months were dreadfully difficult and challenging. The physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion, the fear that medicines would run out before a fresh consignment arrived, the worry that I could be incapacitated by a serious illness, and the anguish of patients dying at my hands. But all the above difficulties were more than balanced by the joy we felt at being able to help. I was amazed that with very little aid, I could do a great deal of good. I played every night. Patients, their relatives, staff members, they'd all come up to the veranda and even up into my room and listen in absolute silence. The hospital was at last ready. I never imagined that besides grappling with death and disease, I would learn to design a hospital. Saw tree trunks for construction, work as a builder, carpenter, help clear the encroaching forest, plant an orchard, plan a garden, in fact, become an accomplished manual laborer. We could now, finally, admit patients too ill to return to their homes. To witness a busy working day in the hospital at Lambarene would shock a colleague working in the West. The hospital compound was filled with waiting patients, quite a few of whom were mothers nursing their babies in their arms. There were also relatives and friends of the waiting patients, and often animals mixed in with this motley crowd, cats, dogs, monkeys. I distinctly remember one constant visitor, a pelican, who got attached to me and followed me closely the moment I stepped out of the hospital. No spitting. Talk softly. Hey, no noise. Were orders strictly supervised by Joseph. It was as if a village had grown, centered around the hospital. I felt it was important to adopt the ways of life and living of the locals. They felt comfortable and at home in an environment they were used to. The spit and polish of hospitals in the West would have made them run away into the open arms of the eagerly awaiting local Ogangas. There were no watches or clocks to mark the time. They would corrode and disintegrate in the intense heat and moisture. All time seemed eternally present. Dawn would usher in the day, and a bell would be struck to mark the start of work. It would be struck once more at high noon, when the heat was intolerable, signifying a short break for lunch. The day ended at sundown, as there was no electricity, except for the operation theater, enabling surgery also at night. Elsewhere, hurricane lamps served as the only source of light. It was nearly a year and a half of my work in Africa. I was content, happy. I had seen close to 2,500 patients in the first year. I was living the dream I had dreamt. But then a catastrophe, a cataclysmic change. It was August 1914. The outbreak of the First World War was an unmitigated disaster for humanity, as also for my work in Africa. One fine day, early morning, a French officer walked up to me and my wife exclaiming, "You are German in French territory. You are the enemy. You are prisoners and will be confined to your house and you will not work. French soldiers will enforce this." What was I to do? I decided to start working on a book I had long intended to write, The Philosophy of Civilization. I would read and write through the day and under a kerosene lamp through the greater part of the night. But then things changed. I was the only doctor for hundreds of miles around. What would happen if soldiers, officers of the French army in Equatorial Africa, fell ill? They allowed me to work again, asking me to treat only the French, still calling me an enemy. I refused and said I would only work on the condition that I would minister to any and every individual who sought my help. The officer moved his hand to the holster of his revolver. Was he going to shoot me? After what seemed like an eternity, he turned around, walked away. The West does not seem to realize that progress in every and any field of human endeavor should be linked to moral obligation. Only then one would be able to distinguish what is valuable from what is worthless or even harmful. But then what is the link between civilizational progress and universal ethics? I felt compelled and obsessed to find the link. Perhaps it was the dreadful war which fueled this maddening obsession. I thought, but the problem remained unsolved. It was as if I was lost in the African jungle and I could not find a way out. To make matters worse, Helen was ill and exhausted. We were given permission to rest and recoup at my patient's house in Saint-Lopez. No sooner had we settled down when we received a call to visit a seriously ill wife of a missionary 100 miles upstream. I boarded a small steamer, sat on the deck, and wrote endless sentences on sheets of paper, trying to force from my head the universal concept of ethics, which I had not come across in all the philosophy I had read so far. I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote. 2 days passed. On the evening of the third day, I stopped thinking of civilization or ethics or anything at all, really. I watched, entranced, the setting sun, casting a beautiful red glow on the sky and on the river. Unexpectedly, unsought, there flashed in my mind the phrase, reverence for life. Reverence for life. I had, at last, found my way in the jungle. I had at last pushed open the door and let out the imprisoned thought I was desperately searching for. I had made a discovery. The discovery was of a thought hidden in the crevices of my mind, a thought which, if practiced, could set Western civilization on a whole new course. Reverence for life, when applied to human life, is merely a small fragment of the universal ethics enjoining reverence for all life, plants, animals, as also fellow men and women. Universal life dictates that all life is sacred. It also dictates that man aids all life that needs aid. It encompasses love, compassion, truth, and devotion. It protects the ecosystem which sustains our planet. War seems to be stitched into the genome of man. Perhaps reverence for life, if practiced, would unstitch this demon and free humankind. The world I know will remember me, at least in the near future, for my work in Africa, but I hope my legacy to this world is the discovery of a new thought which could promote brotherhood among all people and peace among nations. It's Bach's Chaconne. I love this one.
We have an announcement to make. The Nobel Prize for Peace for the year 1952 has been awarded to Dr. Albert Schweitzer for his great humanitarian work done in the jungles of Africa.
Nobel Prize for Peace. I don't see any peace around. Well, I must thank them for this honor, but express my inability to go to Norway and accept the prize this year. There's much work to be done here. I belong to Africa. I can't just leave. I shall give my acceptance speech when I visit Europe next. The award does come with the prize money of $30,000, which is very welcome. I will be able to build a leprosarium for my 250 leprosy patients who are still unfortunately housed in very poorly built huts. Well. Joy, jubilation, not just in Lambaréné, but the whole of Gabon. Over all these many years, I would leave for Europe for a few months after 3 to 4 years of work in Africa, primarily to raise money, give organ recitals, deliver lectures, and receive prizes and doctorates from prestigious universities in the West. My best prize, however, is the gratitude and the unspoken blessings of many whose suffering and pain we help to relieve. I've almost finished making this cross. I've already fashioned 2 such crosses. One is placed on the grave of my wife. I can see the cross through the window between the river and the edge of the forest. The other is placed on the grave of Mademoiselle Emma, who worked with me for 30 years. The third cross, the one I'm making now, shall be on my grave, next to Helen's, when I leave the world. I have grown old. I have spent close to 40 years in the heart of Africa. To me, it does not seem so long. From the steps of my house, I can see a beautiful sunset, the setting sun of red and gold, the waters of the great river bathed in a soft light, the first sparkling stars in the sky. The primeval forest close to the riverbank, dark, mysterious, with tall, dense trees, sentinels of the past, present, and future. I'm 85 years old. It is my birthday today. Numerous African patients with their families and relatives of patients I had never met came streaming in, one after the other, to greet me, insisting on shaking hands. I was touched by the gifts they brought: papayas, guavas, bananas, bags of rice, walking sticks, a parrot speaking an African dialect, a mongoose, a most welcome gift. And of course, their heartfelt greetings for their old doctor. And so many congratulatory messages from all over the world, from the heads of all the states in Europe, from Russia, from universities, institutes, and many well-wishers and friends. I so wish Helen was here with me today. The festivities just don't seem right without her. Our friendship and romance started when I was 21 years old. I studying at Strasbourg University and she in the Advanced College of Nursing. We married just before we left for Africa. I remember how our marriage caused disturbing ripples amongst the academics at the University of Strasbourg. A professor from the science faculty asked me bluntly, "Why should you, Albert, a Gentile, marry a Jew?" Are not both Jew and Gentile children of the same God? I could never have been able to continue my work without the help and support of Helen. I could see her fading year by year till she could barely walk, yet insisted on staying with me. She was finally forced to stay back in Alsace. The past. It seems so distant. I see it as if through a cloud. The hot, steaming, slushy earth of the African jungle seemed to mock our arrival. The many days, months, and years that followed were marked by joy and sorrow, victories and defeats, by challenges we met and by challenges where we faltered. Slowly, very slowly, from the slushy earth of this equatorial forest, at last rose a fairly well-equipped hospital of 200 beds to help the sick and suffering. Physicians and surgeons, specialist nurses, architects, builders, even carpenters from the east and west, embracing the spirit to serve, came to help us. Many staying for years. My daughter Rina comes to help for several months every year. The staff loves her. She supervises all activities, and I know she will continue my legacy. When I first set foot in French Equatorial Congo and saw the awful state in which the Africans worked and lived, a pang of anguish and shame overcame me. It is absolutely true that the white colonials have committed grave injustice, violence, cruelty, committed grave sins and misdemeanors against the colonized for material gains. It is not just physical violence and cruelty that has been perpetrated on the Africans. It is a cruelty to their emotional lives, a cruelty to their minds. I'm trying my best to still my fevered mind, but thoughts continue to invade my being. I can almost hear them speak to me. Is it the extra glass of Riesling at dinner that makes me so digress? Or is it the sadness I feel at the state of the world we live in? The world did not learn from the calamity of the First World War. A whole generation of young men meeting a horrific, useless death. Civilization was supposed to progress after 1918, and so-called progress led to the Second World War, which was responsible for the death of millions. We had the nuclear holocaust in Japan, and then the arms race, the stockpiling of nuclear weapons that threaten the destruction of our planet. There is mistrust in place of trust, hate in place of love. Will sense prevail? Or will nuclear war engulf the world and destroy all life on earth? If we continue to tread this path, we will enter a new dark age, darker than any in the history of man, an uninhabited wasteland. A heap of broken images where the sun beats, where the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Music always soothes me, particularly the music of Bach. It restores equanimity even when I am agonized within. It allows me to commune with my inner stream of consciousness and with the Supreme Being. There is a remarkable dualism in our world. Day and night, good and evil, thought and reason. Reason determines material progress, but thought, pure thought, is even more important than reason. Discoveries in the realm of thought have helped civilization to progress and endure. Is civilization just progress in different spheres of human activity? No. Material progress, scientific progress, even intellectual progress needs to be associated with spiritual progress. Ethics needs to be linked to progress so that there is an ethical development of man and mankind. The thoughts of the great prophets of the past, Zarathustra, his thought that the world is beset by good and evil forces and that we choose the good and fight the evil. The thought of Jesus, that the kingdom of heaven is within you, within your heart, and has no throne. The thought that reverence for life is the ethical link that will help the spiritual and ethical progress of man and mankind. The thought that all great religions of the world are centered in the universality of love. Thoughts such as these give rise to emotions, compassion, kindness, truth, forgiveness, and above all, love. The world, the universe, life, death will remain a mystery. Einstein felt so, as did the great quantum physicist Max Planck. We must therefore accept the world as it is, an enigma, a world that has joy and sorrow, a world that has purpose and yet seems purposeless, a world that has meaning and yet at times lacks meaning. We are part of this world, active participants. We must forge an ethical link with our will to live, our will to progress. That ethical link is reverence for life, for all life, for all creation. The birthday celebrations do seem to go on and on. I wish they'd stop now. This is the only birthday in Africa of the so many that I feel sad. Is it because I feel my end is near, or is it perhaps because I cannot stop thinking of Helen? She was the breath, smiles, and tears of all my life. I feel a tinge of remorse that I held the hands of so many patients, offering solace and comfort when close to death, yet was unable to do so for her when she died far away in Europe. She wrote to me 2 days before she passed away. "You must have faith," she wrote. "We shall surely meet again. In another place, in another world. Till then, live your wonderful life to the fullest." When you need me, whisper my name in your heart, and I will be there. I would like to call the playwright onto stage.
getting right.
I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my very pleasant duty and pleasure and privilege to thank Suni Tarapurwala. Please give her a hand. For this wonderful direction. I told you, Suni, right from the start, that you would be able to direct theatre as well as you direct cinema. And also thank Jim Saab, Jim, for an excellent sterling performance that has brought Schweitzer live on stage. Suni, I also thank you for, I remember reading the first draft of what I wrote to you, and I thank you for the numerous inputs that you put in with that draft and numerous other drafts. And Jim also, I remember reading the play with you twice or thrice, and you filled in some of the lacunae that were present in my script. I should thank so many others, those who made this event possible. Zubin Balapuria for the music. Yale Krishna for light, I think, and for design and execution. And
Satvika.
Forget names, you know.
Satvika.
Satvika for design again, and for the sound, the production of sound. I need to thank so many others. Burgess Desai for being supportive and help right from the inception to the realization of this event. Homi Khushru Khan, my brother-in-law, really a brother to me, for choosing the music with me, Bach, which so enlivened this performance. Khushru Santok of the NCPA was so kind and courteous. And of course, Farah, who was so kind to me. Farah, I don't know where you're sitting, but I give you a good hug and many, many thanks. I think I've exhausted the thanks. Forgive me if I've forgotten some people. I often do so. Let me perhaps say a few words on what I wrote. The first question, so many ask me, why in the blazes are you wanting to write a play? And I really couldn't quite answer that question. It was just an urge within me. I want to write, that's all there is to it. And this has been there for the last 5 to 7 years. It almost became, well, a 7-year itch. And I think it has been satisfied, and I do sincerely hope the itch does not come back again. Also, I must not forget this lady. Oh gosh, I almost forgot her. I must thank a lady who's no longer there, who's passed away. Her name was Anaita. She was a school teacher in a good school here and ultimately became a principal. When she came to know that I was, the subject of my play was Schweitzer, like Suni, she would always badger me, when are you starting, when are you starting? What is more, she gave me a great deal of information about Schweitzer and also told me where to get more research material, which I finally did. She's no longer there. I'm sure she was a wonderful lady. She must be an angel up above in the heavens, as be smiling at us at this event. Yes, why Schweitzer? Why Schweitzer was the next question. Why Schweitzer? For one thing, he was very well known in the West. In fact, there is a renaissance of Schweitzer. His 150th anniversary is in 2025, and there is a great hoo-ha and a great deal of celebration about that particular anniversary. But here, no one seemed to know him. It was a shocking surprise to me. In a serious way, and again, why Schweitzer? Find me a man with such great intellectual endowment, a doctor of philosophy, a doctor of music, a doctor of theology, a great exponent of all religions, a historian, a musician, a musicologist, a virtuoso in performing Bach in his 20s. Becomes a doctor with 7 years study after 30. The world is at his feet. He turns his back on the world and feels impelled to minister to the poor and the miserable and the sick in the tropical jungles of equatorial Africa. Find me a man such as this. I don't think there is. When I used to write about him, I sometimes spent sleepless nights wondering the difficulties, the challenges, the conflict that this man must have suffered. Not knowing whether, in a difficult problem, what he did was going to kill the man or cure him. The agony and the ecstasy. The agony when the man lived, or rather the agony when the man died, and the ecstasy when the man lived. And then, of course, it was also his great ethical thought, reverence for life. Jim has said beautifully about that. He felt that if this was indeed practiced, there would be a new renaissance. That if practiced, this would be a torch, a burning torch that would light the darkness within men's hearts and dispel the darkness in this cruel world. There was one other reason for my writing this, and a very important reason. I wanted to present the qualities of indeed a very, very great doctor. To the medical profession, to all health workers. How would I call him? I mean, he was a fantastic man. I would perhaps say that he was the, what would I say? I would say that he was the apostle of medicine and of the practice of medicine. Medicine, of course, has made great advances in the last 2 centuries. Even so, there are a few ways in which medicine seems to have gone off track. I wanted to present a doctor with a great spirit, a spirit which all medical professional people, all the greater fraternity of medicine should imbibe. The spirit of service and sacrifice. The service of hard work, of empathy, of compassion, of endurance, of perseverance, and above all, ladies and gentlemen, of humanity. Of humanity. This is what modern medicine needs. I could not have brought this message by merely giving a didactic lecture, as we often do in our humanity classes. We hold those once a month in the hospital. Nor could I do it with tutorials or with discussions. I felt I could only do it by resuscitating, if I may so, Schweitzer, dramatizing his life and making him come alive on stage, as Suni and Jim have done. And for this, Suni and Jim, I'm indeed very, very grateful to both of you. Finally, you must remember that it is not only to the medical profession that he speaks to the whole world. His message to everyone, is a message of universal love, for reverence for life really includes, is the heart of it, is universal love. And isn't that important, ladies and gentlemen? In a world today which is literally fueled by the acquisition of power, wealth, and the scramble for increasing higher positions. That will be all, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for coming in large numbers indeed. I'm indeed grateful. I never thought I would fill an auditorium as big as this, though mind you, my wife intuitively, and her intuition is remarkable, said, don't worry, everyone will come to hear us. A final request to you, ladies and gentlemen. Will you please stand once again and give a rousing ovation to Suni and Jim for their wonderful proposal.